1.
All right, hello, willkommen, bienvenue, konnichiwa, ni hao, jambo. It's time for the Amish Inquisition yet again. Episode 156 on Sunday the 25th of October. I'm Amish Phil.
I'm Amish Ben.
I'm Amish Matt.
And tonight's guest is an author, blogger, lecturer, and a true free thinker. You can go to I can't even say it.
Say that 5 times fast.
I can't say it once slow. Go to truefreethinker.com to find out more. Ken, Ammi, how are we doing?
Great, thank you for having me.
Is it Ammi or Ammi or Ammi?
Ammi, just fine.
Cool. I was just saying before that I was looking through some of your book titles and there's such a wide range of stuff that you're researching and writing about. How on earth did you get into this?
Ooh, that is potentially a really long story, but as far back as I can recall, I was, I guess, interested in reality itself, what really is real and what isn't. And starting in as far back as I can pinpoint it, in 6th grade, so I guess 11 years old or so, I would go to this place that's called the library, where they have these things called books. Yeah. And and my main interests were cryptozoology, UFOs and aliens, and witchcraft. Back then, that's what I started reading about at my tender age. And so that kind of has never gone away, though, those sorts of interest. I can't say I've devoted my life to the study of those things, but certainly, like you said, yeah, from my book titles, you can say that's something that's kind of stuck with me.
Well, cryptozoology, you're talking about things like Bigfoot and Mothman and Flannel Man and all these sorts of different entities that people report seeing. But it seems like a lot of your more recent work's more focused on theology.
Yes, definitely.
So how's that transition?
Well, see, that was all part of it. That is part of my interest in seeking truth. Led me going through quite a few different paths, and a lot of life experience led me to there. So now I essentially have almost the same interests, but the difference is the worldview through which I look at them now. And that's what landed me also in the main topic that got us connected together, is the issue of Nephilim and giants. Right.
So this is something that goes back to the Old Testament, isn't it?
Right.
And the books of Enoch, I guess, which aren't part of the Bible as we know it. But they figure quite prominently, don't they, in the books of Enoch as well?
Yes. As well as other... a book of Enoch is something that would be categorized as a pseudepigraphical text. Don't ask me why, but scholars like to invent clever names, right? You already have the term apocrypha. That isn't good enough. Let's make up pseudepigrapha. And that's like a span of time, right? So a few hundred years BC to a few hundred years AD, any text written during that time that's not canon is pseudepigrapha. Again, don't ask me why. That's just, I guess scholars need something to do.
And does that play, I suppose the Gnostic text would fall into that category as well, would they?
They could technically, but then again, they want to refer to them as Gnostic texts, right? They want to lay out a specific category for those. And I mean, okay, so this stuff is technical, really, because then you have New Testament Apocrypha, which is technically pseudepigrapha. So I mean, you have Old Testament Apocrypha, and then you have Old Testament Pseudepigrapha. But since they're not canon, it's just a separate category. I don't know. It's one of those things. You could, if you go get technical about it, it's just all fancy categories and terms. Let's just say ancient literature. Why not? Yeah,
that sort of is an all-encompassing sort of term that would make more sense to me. Well, I'm interested in this concept of the true free thinker. I said it right that time. Because, I mean, it occurs to me that if you went down the street, Ken, and asked 100 people, are you a free thinker? 99 out of 100 are going to say, yeah, of course I am, aren't they? But I'm guessing you maybe have an issue with that.
Well, again, there's always common parlance, right? And then there's technical definitions, and they differ. So on a common parlance level, sure, everybody wants to be think of themselves as a free thinker. But then on a technical level, there are certain people who could not cogently refer to themselves as such. For example, if someone's a strict reductionist, like a physicalist or a naturalist or a materialist, and they believe that their brains consist of a accidental and random mixture of biochemicals that produce neural reactions that we call thoughts, then they really can't be a true free thinker or a free thinker at all, because those chemicals are predestined to do what they do by the laws of thermodynamics. So you cannot, how could you, along your evolutionary path, accidentally gain the capability of bypassing the laws of thermodynamics, right? So
this is what people like that. Some of the new atheists, like Sam Harris, talk about the lack of free will, don't they?
Right.
Or that it's an illusion, rather. Maybe it's illusory.
Right. And that's the problem they have. Is first they want to argue us into a position of physicalism and reductionism, so that I'll tell you, a friend of mine, for instance, I was at his house and he offered me some soda to drink, and I said, I hardly ever drink soda. And he says, why? I said, it's just a bunch of chemicals. And he said, well, so are you. So first they want to talk us into that position, and then they want to say, well, regardless though, you can't live this way, right? You can't live thinking of yourself and your fellow humans as a biological sausage, right? Just a bunch of chemicals. You can't live that way. And so set that aside and let's try to talk about how we don't actually have free will, but it's an illusion. And well, then we might as well go with it, because then it still provides us some sort of way to hold people accountable for their actions, right? So they want their cake, they want to eat it, and they don't want to get fat.
Well, it opens up you mentioned there about being held accountable for your actions. I mean, it's like prosecuting crimes. I mean, if there's no such thing as free will, could you argue against prisons and no punishment for criminals? You end up in this awful place that you're trying to defend.
See, that's what's interesting is atheists will generally argue against, let's say, specifically biblical ethics on the basis that, well, it's just a control system that, human beings invented along the way. But then they want to say, well, but we need to hold people accountable for their actions. Well, that's a control system. I mean, every healthy society functions under a control system.
Right.
That can't be just a scare tactic. It's actually real. You have to have a way to control what people do, as to the best of our ability within certain boundaries, of course. And so they'll appeal to concepts such as, well, let's say that there's a person who is a sociopath or a psychopath, or just has various other mental ailments, who takes it upon themselves to commit certain crimes, but we can't judge them on the same level that we could a mentally sound person. So there is something to that. We have a system of laws that are specific to considering whether the person committed what's called the murder in the first degree, second degree, or a crime of passion or manslaughter. We have all these various categories to take into account, specifically what sort of crime it was and what was the person's ability. This is also why we have juvenile courts versus adult courts and things like that. We have to take all those things into consideration. So again, yeah, they want to talk us into taking a reductionist kind of view and then say, well, we can't really live that way. And that's something that's been argued against atheists for a very long time. It's unlivable. You can't actually live out that worldview.
Yeah, you have to find some moral authority from somewhere. And if it's not from a higher place, then where do you derive that value from, that judgment?
Right. I mean, consider the Nuremberg trials for the Nazis, right? The Nazis brilliantly said, we're just following orders, right? It was the zeitgeist of our culture. Our authoritative leaders told us to do these things, and we did them. And the reply was, well, but there's yet a higher law. Now, at that point, you either say, well, it's derived from God, or it's derived from the nation that came along and beat yours.
Right. So
it's like a survival of the fittest scheme. So what happens if that nation then gets beaten and by one that says, you know what, the Nazis were right after all. See, this is a problem why I actually wrote a book about Nazism, communism, and I titled it From Zeitgeist to Poltergeist, right? I mean, what happens when the moral zeitgeist of any given culture turns into a poltergeist? What happens then? Because you're telling us just go with the zeitgeist. And, well, what if it doesn't go in the direction that you presuppose it should go?
What do you mean by turning it into a poltergeist? Is that...
So as a term and a concept, zeitgeist is the sort of thing, sort of concept that Richard Dawkins, for example, likes to use. So the moral zeitgeist of any culture is the spirit of the age, right?
Yeah.
The way things are going within the culture, that would be the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And so what happens when it goes like in Nazi Germany? Things are going along, and all of a sudden, this group takes over, and actually they're elected in the Nazi party. And all of a sudden, for a large portion of the German populace, all of a sudden, the zeitgeist isn't going in the direction they would like to see it go. It turns into a poltergeist, right? Yeah. A noisy, troublesome, violent spirit.
Right.
And then what? If your basis for ethics is whatever the culture happens to be doing, then what? Then what? And it almost becomes a survival of the fittest scheme at that point.
Yeah, and if you, I suppose this is sort of a danger with democracies in a way, in that it's the rule of the many, and regardless of what the moral standing of that view or outlook is of the many, that wins out in our system. It's like the ancient Greeks thought that we should be ruled by philosopher kings, didn't they? The wisest and the best, and that they should have sort of hegemony over power rather than one man, one vote, because of, it is a precarious position to be in, a democracy.
Yes. And a lot of people also confuse ethical for legal. If something is legal, they'll say, well, therefore it's good. Therefore it is ethical. Well, that's not necessarily the case.
Right. Yeah. I mean, one sort of example I could think of would maybe be the death penalty. That's something we don't have in our country, but you have in certain states, isn't it? And,
right.
Ethically, I kind of struggle with the death penalty. I struggle with the state having the power to execute an individual.
And I think the problem is that even when people support the death penalty, they would have to admit that it is a risky option because we've seen many cases of people who have been incarcerated for years, if not decades, and then the crime gets reinvestigated, and guess what? They didn't do it after all.
Yeah, I think the ethical argument against it is that you only need to get it wrong once to invalidate it as a system. Yeah.
I mean, I don't necessarily oppose the death penalty, but I think I would not want to be in the position of pressing that button. It's just like you said, it's you don't get a take back.
No, and it's it's always been an argument against instituting the death penalty is that your conviction rate will fall because of this pressure on the jurors, isn't it? But yeah, I didn't think we were going to be talking about the death penalty tonight. Okay, should we go back to the Nephilim?
Sure.
Because you were saying that's how we got in touch. I think you commented on one of our recent videos with Adam Stokes, wasn't it? When we were talking about the giants and the Nephilim and the heroes of old and all this.
Yes, it was. It was the show with. I'm trying to find. It was. I believe his name was Alex.
Adam.
Adam
Stokes. It was.
Right. I actually just emailed him today.
All right.
Because I was curious about some of the things he stated, so I was hoping for a little clarification or some resources or something.
What's your sort of research over the Nephilim and the giants? What sort of conclusions has that led to you, and what's your position on them?
Well, now, the way you phrase that question is very important, and I'm glad you did so. You asked about the Nephilim and the giants.
Yeah.
And it is absolutely key that we separate those two for more than one reason. Because I do often run into the phrase Nephilim giants.
Right.
Okay, see, that's different than Nephilim and giants, because now we have two categories to deal with, and they're important. Linguistically, it's important because obviously one of them is a very specific Hebrew term, and the other one is a vague, generic, subjective, and undefined English term. So that alone shows us we need to have these in different categories. Now, maybe eventually, after we define what giant means, maybe eventually you can compound them. But at the outset of a discussion, we need to go over the groundwork. At least that's my common practice.
Right.
So, Nephilim, the term itself, is argued about. Forget who they were. Just the word is argued over. So let's start there.
Go ahead.
Because some claim that it derives from a Hebrew root nafal, which would then mean fall or fallen one. But some argue that it derives from an Aramaic root, nephilah. And now here's where it gets a little tricky, because you have qualified scholars such as Dr. Michael Heiser, who says that the Aramaic nephilah means giant. Okay, now, at that point, I would say it begs the question, because we still don't know what giant means. But that's fine. We can pause there. Nephilah means giant. Okay. However, the J. Edward Wright Endowed Professor of Judaic Studies, who is J. Edward Wright himself, who is a PhD, and is the director of the Arizona Center for Judaic Studies at the University of Arizona, he wrote, the term traditionally translated as giants in both the Greek Septuagint and now the English is Nephilim, a term based on the root meaning to fall. It has nothing to do with size. And then he specifically goes on to state that that's true for both the Hebrew and the Aramaic. Quote, The root Nephal in Aramaic also means fall and not giants.
Could they have been really big guys who just trips over a lot? And therefore, you're just falling over. Yeah.
You're falling all over yourselves.
Yeah.
That's what you do, Ben, isn't it?
Well, that's it. I'm trying to find a kindred history.
Why? How tall are you, if I may?
I'm not that tall. 6'2".
Okay, well, I'm 6 even, and my wife calls me a giant all the time.
Wow.
And you don't fall over as much as I do.
Well, no, I'm an infamous oaf of a klutz. Infamous, yeah.
Yeah, I'm with you on that score as well. Sorry, I interject. It was getting interesting. And I put my
no, but see, that's an important point, because why is it I'm 6 foot tall in modern day North America, but I'm called the giant, and I've been referred to as a giant many, many times in my life. Now, why is that? Because 6 foot tall in North America is not that impressive.
No?
So that shows you something about the absolutely subjective nature of that term. And that's why I said when Michael Heiser says Nephilah means giant, he hasn't told me anything, because I still don't know what he means. Now, I do happen to know what he means because I've read his works. But so we're not even done dealing with a word yet, much less anything else. But I mean, this is, to me, what's incredibly important. If we never get to anything else, at least to get people to understand, you need to talk about these things before you jump into the middle of a discussion. And people are talking about giants. And for instance, I could think of 5 or 6 different definitions of giant. So how could we have a discussion about it unless we go through all this trudgery first? So the point here was that, we have 2 qualified scholars who disagree on this. Well, okay, so be it. I guess they'll have to just battle it out amongst themselves. We can just claim that there's something known as the word concept fallacy. So it means that there's a difference between a word and a concept. So I can be referred to by the word giant, but the concept is that I'm not really gigantic. I'm average. Okay, so that's important to keep in mind. So in a manner of speaking, regardless of what the word Nephilim means and whether it's from the Hebrew Nephal or Aramaic Nephilah, let's talk about the concept. That's sort of a way to just cut through all of this, except we'll have to tackle the word giant next. So now what's fascinating about Nephilim is they first appear in Genesis 6. Essentially, their whole story is told in 3 verses, and those mere 3 verses have led to millennia worth of discussion. Millennia. And because that's part of why I think it is, because it's so succinct that people read it and wonder, wow, what is all this about? And because when you read it, all of a sudden you're confronted with the issues of who are the sons of God, who are the daughters of men, when was that, when were those days, when was after that, who are the Nephilim. And so each one of those issues is potentially incredibly complicated. So it's led to, like I said, millennia's worth of discussions.
Yeah. Still going on today.
Going on to this day. And particularly during the Second Temple period, which is, like we talked about earlier, where the pseudepigraphical texts were written, and also a lot of rabbinic literature. The issue is the Second Temple period. In my mind, it's interesting, and I think we can learn a lot from it in terms of cultural context, historical context, and grammatical context, but it is well known as a period of wild speculation, and I'm talking wild. And so one of the issues is we don't know why those people wrote what they wrote. We don't know if they were necessarily claiming to be inspired by God. We don't know if they were writing historical fiction. We don't know if they were claiming to have a new we just don't know. So all we could do is read the texts and make them what we will.
The three verses that you mentioned from Genesis 6, just for people who aren't familiar, what are the main points that the Nephilim are referenced to, as far as, coming down and knocking up the sons of daughters of men and all that?
Okay, so to begin with, it was the sons of God who did that. It wasn't the Nephilim. So I read it, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives of all which they chose. And the Lord said, my spirit shall not strive with man, for he is also flesh, and his days shall be 120 years. There were Nephilim of the earth in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men, and they bare children to them, the same became mighty men, which were of old, men of renown. So that's why in that succinct couple of verses there's so much to deal with if you care to dig those rabbit holes, right?
Yeah. So sons of God. I mean, what's the difference between Nephilim and the sons of God that I referenced there?
So it would be that the Nephilim are the offspring of the mating between the sons of God and the daughters of men.
That's it, right? Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
The verse is the Nephilim were in the earth in those days. Does that? I mean, I've just read that literally and thought, oh, they dug their way out and met all these daughters of men. But I mean, I know that there are people out there who have referenced their idea that the Nephilim are extraterrestrial or whatever. But the fact that this says they were in the earth in those days, I mean, that's just going to throw fuel on the fire, isn't it? And people are going to say things like, "Oh, the aliens are in the earth," and then they came. They were here all the time. I mean, was that Men in Black or Independence Day or one of them? Where I can't remember the one where the thing comes down and they come up. War of the Worlds.
War of the Worlds. Yeah, yes. Well, of course, they had come to Earth long before and just hibernated or actually they had their craft in the Earth, and then they came down on lightning bolts. Remember? Mm-hmm. It's fascinating how many aliens come to Earth, in the way that Jesus said he saw Satan fall to Earth as lightning. That's something to ponder.
Yeah, I think. Are you insinuating that might be accidentally on purpose?
I don't want to deviate from our train of thought, but I will say this much: if you're studying aliens, and by the way, yes, that is a word we would have to spend some time defining, and UFOs, another word we would have to spend some time defining, you'll inevitably find that the occult is never far away, ever. It's inevitable. It's right there. So be that as it may.
Yeah.
Where were we? Yeah, I don't know if I would necessarily read the in the earth as meaning literally underground, because the text is telling you that they are the offspring of mating. So contextually, I would not see any reason to think anything other than that they're just hanging around. They're on the earth because that's where they were born.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's the sons of God, which are, what would you call them? Sort of, are we speculating there was some sort of hybrid creature or supernatural creature that came and maybe possessed men or mated with women as they were in whatever form they were, and then the offspring of these women, that's the Nephilim.
That's that Aliens prequel. What is it?
Prometheus.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Prometheus. Yeah.
Yeah, I wrote a book reviewing the entire Aliens and Predator movie franchises. And yeah, Ridley Scott was very plain about how he was writing within the genre of historical fiction based on the Old Testament, no question about it. Yeah. So I'm going to apologize for how often I'm going to have to say I wrote a book about this, but I just find that after a while, if I've written an entire book and I'm giving you one sentence, I might as well direct the interested reader to it. It's just, at this point, it's inevitable. So I wrote one title on the Genesis 6 affairs, sons of God, angels or not. And that book is just basically historically who took which view of who the sons of God are from the earliest possible sources in the BC days till about 500 AD. So I covered almost 1,000 years. And the majority, the traditional and the original view is the angel view. Amongst both the earliest Jews and Christians alike. And, when Jews and Christians agree on something, we should pay attention. And so that's whether somebody likes it or not, whether they disagree or not. I'm just saying that's just a historical fact, and it's verifiable. So now the issue is that biblically, angels look just like human males. No wings, no halos. That's it. They look just like human males, and there's no biblical statement about how they shapeshift or they take on human bodies or any such thing. It just doesn't exist. So every indication we have is that they are, the way I explain it is angels are as physical as Jesus is post-resurrection, in that he can be touched, he can eat, he can be seen, but he can be visible or invisible, right? So they have access to other, whatever you want to call them, realms, dimensions that we don't. But in terms of interacting in our physical world, they're just as physical as we are. They're just in what we would term an unfallen body or a glorified body. And so that's what makes the angel view so commonsensical. You have a being that looks like a human male and mating with a human female. It's not that difficult. And that instantly explains why it is only strictly male sons of God and strictly female daughters of men. Because all the sons of God are male. So they had human wives that were all female. It's very makes a lot of sense of the way the text states it for us. Because
sorry, Ken.
No, go right ahead.
I was going to say this all happens just before the flood, doesn't it, in the Bible?
Yes.
So it's
the reason for it, is it not?
That's is it a consequence of the the horizontal mambo between the sons of God and the daughters of men messing up the gene pool, as it were?
I would say that is a speculation. It's a reasonable one, but I couldn't say that's what the text says, right? So,
yeah, no, sorry, I don't get many reasonable explanations assigned to me.
You get half an attaboy for that, Ben.
Well, the thing is, the more I think about the Bible, the less I think of it as a theological text, and the more I think about it as an anthropological text. Because anything it tells us, anything, is inevitably within the context of human beings, right? Our origins, our fall, our redemption. So anything it tells us, it'll eventually have to do with us. So in this case, this is why I only read up to verse 4, because once you get to verse 5, boom, then the focus is on humanity, right? God saw the wickedness of man was great up in the earth. By the way, there you go, in the earth. So human beings were being wicked underground, Yeah. And every imagination of the thoughts of the heart was only evil continually. So now, and then it goes on from there to talk about Noah and the flood. But the thing is, this concept of the problem with humanity, the premise is what happened between the daughters of man and the sons of God. And so that's why it's a reasonable speculation. It's because the two are tied together with the text. So can you get specific enough in the text to get into genetics and all these things? Not necessarily, but the speculation is sound as far as I'm concerned.
I was reading... sorry, go on, Ken.
So then the issue becomes something I think Phil either touched upon or was going to say, that it seems like whatever these offspring and the mating had something to do with the reason for the flood, right? Okay, so now let's think about this. If even part of God's reasons for the flood was to be rid of Nephilim, then any concept of post-flood Nephilim would imply that God failed.
Yeah. Yep.
Okay, that's very important. And we're specifically told 8 people and some animals survived. Okay, so now you have another problem. Nephilim did not survive the flood. Now, so if someone wants to argue post-flood Nephilim, they're going to have to literally invent a way to get them through the flood, either by surviving or by whatever, genetics or another incursion of angels coming to Earth, or they're going to have to invent it because it's not in the text.
Does I read Gary Wayne's book last year, The Genesis 6 Conspiracy, and it's a while since I read it, but doesn't he argue for Nephilim surviving? I can't remember.
Well, most... Essentially, if you're reading any of those books, and I think if you saw the subtitle to my Pop Researchers book, you know I've looked at everything.
Yeah.
And maybe I should just make a statement about that for a moment, because, of course, who's kind of me to talk about this stuff? Well, I'm really nobody. But the thing is, I wrote one book about what the Bible says about these issues, and I thought that would be it. Okay, I'm done with this. But then I thought, oh, man, okay, I'll write another book about what the non-biblical ancient texts say about it. And then I thought, okay, now I'm done with this stuff. And then, okay, I'm going to write a book about what scholarly academics have to say about it. So there's that book. And then I thought, well, okay, I wrote another one. What do what I call the pop researchers say about it? So these are the guys you will most likely encounter when you're looking online for this stuff. And so I've studied in detail what the Bible says, extra biblical texts say, scholars say, and just the regular pop guys. And I call them pop because they're not necessarily credentialed, but they're very popular on this issue. Some of them literally make their living off of this stuff.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind doing that myself, by the way, but it doesn't seem to be happening. And so, yes, the overwhelming majority of people speaking on this stuff somehow get Nephilim past the flood, either by surviving or by returning genetically or by returning through more fallen angels doing the same thing post-flood. Which, again, none of that is in the Bible, and all of it implies that God failed because God missed that loophole. He didn't think of that. By golly, he wanted to be rid of them, but they just figured out a way to get one over on him. So, I mean, that's a problem. It's a genuine problem. And so we're going to get to, because in the Bible, there is a post-flood reference to Nephilim, okay? We'll get to that in a moment. So let's talk about giants, shall we?
Yeah.
As I noted, that's a vague, generic, subjective, and undefined term. And so what does it mean? Every one of us might have a different idea. So are we talking about a metaphor like, oh, he's a giant of industry? Okay, that's a definition, but we can set it aside. Okay, it means something about unusual height. Okay, but unusual is subjective. So is it a couple of inches taller than average? And the average would be subjective as well. Or is it a few feet taller than average? Or is it entire body lengths taller than average? So you see, people could mean very different things when they use the word giant. And so linguistically, let's go back to Genesis 6. Now, when the Hebrew Old Testament was translated into Greek. It's called the Septuagint or the LXX. And the Septuagint translators, I can't even say they translated the word Nephilim. They rendered it as gigantes. Okay, now gigantes literally means earth-born, and it implies nothing about height. It is a term that combines this ultimately is a term that you'll see used in Greek mythology about Titans, okay? And the origin of the Titans is said to have been the sky mating with the earth. The personification of the sky and earth in the form of Greek deities mating together and producing the Titans, right? Which is interesting because we're saying that the sons of God are angels and the daughters of men are women of humans of the earth. So the Greeks just call it sky and earth. It's the same thing, really, when you get down to it. And so there's a problem with the Septuagint, which is we don't know why they translated the way they translated it, but that's what they did. The problem is they also rendered Rephaim as gigantes, and they also rendered Gibborim as gigantes. And it's generally a terrible idea to render more than one word using just one word, because inevitably it causes confusion. I mean, Nephilim, Rephaim, Gibborim, they're not the same word. They don't even sound alike, except for the im ending, which is just the male plural ending. So why would they do that? I have no idea, but it caused a problem that's haunting us until this day. Yeah. So for one, Nephilim are strictly pre-flood hybrids. Rephaim are strictly post-flood, regular, good old humans. And Gibborim, it's just a descriptive term meaning might or mighty. And what's strange is the way they rendered it. Genesis 6:4 in the Greek tells us that the Nephilim became, it tells us the gigantes became gigantes, which is nonsensical, right? You don't become something you already are. But in the Greek, it would tell you that there were gigantes in the earth in those days and also after that, yada, 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 and they became gigantes, men of renown. Well, it just shows you that there's a problem there. Now, English versions who took after the Septuagint just changed gigante to giant. Okay, and they render Nephilim and Rephaim as giant. Thankfully, they tended to drop Gibborim. They just keep it as mighty or might. So they fixed that problem. But so the problem becomes a lot of people talk about this issue by chasing an English word across a Hebrew Bible. And they don't seem to recognize that there's different Hebrew words behind the word giant, or that even if they don't want to bother looking at the Hebrew, they should contextually just think, wait a minute, giants lived pre-flood. They didn't survive. There's giants after the flood. Something has to be different about these giants than those giants. But see, a lot of the pop researchers and a lot of scholars even, that's when they start inventing ways to get them into the post-flood era. Right. So at this point, we have to say that in ancient linguistic terms, what we say as giants, what they said as gigantes, the term itself doesn't imply anything about height. It might have taken on that meaning later in history, but not originally. One of the ways it took on that meaning down the line is because it's used of the Titans. But then again, there's not just one generation of Titans in Greek mythology, and they also vary drastically. Like by the later generations, you have Titans that are said to have 100 arms and the upper body of a humanoid, but the lower body of a serpent, and all kinds of crazy things. And there's also, if I may, a problem with claiming Okay, Gigantes is used of Titans in Greek mythology, and Gigantes is used of Nephilim in the Bible. And Titans were very tall, so Nephilim were very tall. Okay, hold on a minute. It's not that simple, and you're probably getting sick of my being so pedantic by now, but we have to get into these issues, right? How do you know that the same word was being used because they're both very tall? How do you know it wasn't because they're both hybrids or because they're both tyrannical, essentially? I mean, you can't just be myopic and just simplify things and water them down just so you can build a very exciting sounding narrative.
Right, yeah. Because it's such a subjective term, and it's just we want to look for the easy answer. That's why, aren't we? We're just drawn to look for the quick, easy fix.
And frankly, when it comes down to it, I think it is all very easy. It's just that it gets so cluttered and muddled because of the kind of narratives that people they'll spin yarns, right? They'll tell tall tales, and they're very exciting to listen to. I love listening to these guys because it's exciting. I call it theo sci-fi.
Yeah.
But my problem is if you're claiming to do theology, you can't do that. You could not go. Now, incidentally, think about, you might not be aware, but think about how many of these pop researchers, and I'm talking Steve Quayle, L.A. Marzulli, Rob Skiba, Brian Godawa, Derek Gilbert, you name it. How many of those guys have written fictional books about Nephilim and giants, in addition to the books that they claim are based on real research? All of them. All of them have. And I must say, I think that it's such an easy transition for them because what they're putting forth in their books that are supposed to be real research essentially is sci-fi already. Because of all these problems, because they're not stopping to iron all these things out. And so it's very easy for them to transition into just actual novels and sci-fi.
It seems like they've already decided what the conclusion's going to be, and then they're, maybe I'm being harsh, but cherry picking what they want and putting the spin on the text that is required to fulfill the preconceived conclusions.
I mean, ultimately,
it's
a case-by-case basis. And
right. Yeah, sorry to generalize.
My issue is that, for me, this is not a personal thing. It's not an emotional thing. I'm just saying, I'm looking at your research, you guys, and I'm just offering my opinions on it.
Yeah.
I don't know why they're doing what they're doing. I just know that there's a lot of problems. And there's some fundamental level problems. So let me put it this way. For example, a lot of those guys like Gary Wayne are very good researchers, and there's no question about it. So they offer data points, right? And those data points are actual data points, and they're solid. The problem is how they connect those data points. And that's where it becomes more like a philosophical thing. Yeah. It becomes like opinion. And then that's when they start watering things down so that the data points seem to line up when they really don't.
Well, when I read Genesis 6, that's the first book I've read in this sort of area that you're talking about. And he's very, to be fair, he's very open in the way he opens the book. He says, I'm a biblical literalist. I believe it pretty much word for word, the Old Testament, and here I'm going to explain why. So you're reading it, you're armed with that knowledge going into it, that there's a certain philosophy or belief system that's involved with the book. And, providing I feel comfortable, I can read that with an open mind and take the bits out of it that I want and maybe disregard other bits. I can still respect the amount of work that's gone in and research I certainly, even though I probably I'm not with him on it all, I certainly learned a lot about the Old Testament in the process, which I didn't know before.
But so the issue becomes, did you really learn about the Old Testament? Honestly, I hate to sound that way, but did you really learn something about the Old Testament, or did you read the watered down version of how he's able to spin a narrative, honestly, because again, who engages in what I call keyword-based theology, search for a keyword text where that word occurs, and then you just connect all those texts together. And he comes up with some fascinating narratives, but when you stop and you consider, well, wait a minute, this text is very different in context than this one and this one and this one, and you're just running down this list and mashing them together, but it doesn't actually work. It doesn't actually work. So, if I may, do you want to just get back on track with the issue of the flood and the giants?
Yeah.
Okay, so post-flood giants. Now, the issue is Rephaim. Rephaim are a people group who were living in the land of Canaan, and so the Israelites had to confront them at some point. Rephaim. So many meanings. It can range from healing to death, incidentally. I mean, imagine a word, the root word, repha. It can range from healing to death. Can you imagine you ask somebody, I heard so-and-so was sick. How are they doing? Repha. Are you saying they got healed or they died? I don't know what's going on here.
So rather ambiguous term.
I mean, this is why context is king, though.
Right.
This is why ultimately the context will define what a word means, not the etymology. But so Repha is a main category under which there are subcategories such as Anakim or Zamzumim, right? Just like we might say nation, state, city, or tribe, clan, family, right? That's what it's like. So the most unusual thing you could ever get directly from the Bible about Rephaim is that some of them are tall. Okay, that's subjective. And some of them are of great stature or very tall. Okay, well, that's subjective. And incidentally, it's subjective to Hebrew males of those days who average 5 to 5'3" in feet. And I know you might have to convert it.
No, we're on feet. We're on feet and inches in the UK still.
We're right.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Brexit and all that.
Meeting of the. So that's how little I know. But okay, so 5 feet even or 5'3". That was the average Hebrew male of those days. So there you have it. Tall could be 6 feet. Very tall could be 6.5 or 7. I mean, you don't have to go very far to when you're talking tall or very tall. But that's it. You wouldn't get anything really beyond that idea. Rephaim or their subgroups, they're just good old-fashioned human beings. There's no indication that they're anything besides that, except the root word repha. Okay, the word repha is, like I said, sometimes refers to the dead. So there are texts which speak of the spirits of the dead, and they're referred to as repha. So, for instance, you'll hear some of these people talk about the mighty dead ones, because you'll run across the Hebrew Repha Gibor or Gibor Repha, but it's saying is that these were once mighty people and now they're dead. Really, there's nothing beyond that unless you want to make it sound more exciting about it. So just because the root word Repha means dead and it can refer to the dead doesn't necessarily mean that the Rephaim is a people group composed of, I don't know what,
zombies,
spirit beings or anything like that. There's just no indication of that whatsoever. That there's just not. Now, the issue becomes, if you might recall, you said, okay, so if we were reading here in Genesis 6, recall it said that Nephilim were in the earth in those days and also after that, right? Okay, let's just pause there for a minute.
Okay.
So now we're going to go to the post-flood reference to Nephilim. And this is where Moses sends 12 spies into the land before they enter it. And they go around, they're there for 40 days scouting out the land, and they come back and they present a report of what they saw, right? And then, hopefully, you're not actually reading the narrative of chapter 13. Hopefully, you'll just read one or two verses and then pick them up and run with it. Because then you can get away with something.
Right.
So the spies said, there we saw the Nephilim, the sons of Anak, the Anakim, which come of the Nephilim. And we were in our own sights as grasshoppers, and so we were in their sight. See, so they're claiming they saw the Nephilim during a post-flood time, and they claim that that Anakim are related to Nephilim, and they claim Nephilim are very, very tall. So hopefully you'll just pick that up. You'll leave this chapter behind, and then you'll start weaving fancy tall tales, because that's more exciting than what I'm about to tell you. So, for one, let's just get our head fixed on something. There are 3 times the word Nephilim appears in the Bible. Genesis 6, 4, and then Numbers 13:33, where it appears twice. That's it, period. Any other time you see the English word giant, it's Rephaim or Repha.
Right.
So that's important. Now, the important thing here is the narrative, which is that all 12 of them return to the camp and they report to the Israelites what they saw during their 40 days of scouting out the land. Okay, now here it is. They said, we came to the land. You know what? I'm reading the KJV. I'm going to change it, or else I'm going to read, we came to the land whither thou sentest us. And, you know,
good old King James.
I've read it. I've read the KJV. I don't necessarily mind it, but I only want to get tongue-tied a certain amount of times before I look like a schmuck. Or is it too late?
Too many dots.
You're good. You're good.
Yeah, we've not got there yet.
So what are you going on? Like New International or something?
I'm going to read the ESV now, English Standard Version.
Right.
Okay. So they came to Moses and Aaron and all the congregation of the people of Israel in the wilderness of Paran and Kadesh. And they brought back word to them and all the congregation and showed them the fruit of the land. They told him, we came from the land which you sent us, to which you sent us. It flows with milk and honey, and here's the fruit. However, the people who dwell in the land are strong, and the cities are fortified and very large. And besides, we saw the descendants of Anak there. The Amalekites dwell in the land of Negeb. The Hittites, the Jebusites, the Amorites dwell in the hill country, and the Canaanites dwell by the sea and along the Jordan. Okay? Mm-hmm. But Caleb quieted the people before Moses and said, let us go up at once and occupy it, for we are able to overcome it. Then the men who had gone up with him said, we are not able to go against the people, for they are stronger than we. So they brought to the people of Israel a bad report of the land that they had spied out, saying, the land through which we've gone to spy it out is a land that devours its inhabitants, and all the people we saw in it are of great height. We saw there the Nephilim, the sons of Anak who come from the Nephilim, and we seemed to ourselves like grasshoppers, and so we seemed to them. Okay, so if nothing else, on the surface level, we see that there's some kind of back and forth going on here, because there's a report that's presented that's accepted as is, no problem. But then Caleb quieted the people. So obviously there was something about the report that was making people nervous. and then...
The fucking giants!
Well, no. See, they hadn't said that yet. Okay, that's what's important. That's what's important. Okay, so contextually, historically, you're talking about wilderness dwellers, tent dwellers, itinerant people, Israelites, right? All of a sudden, they're seeing city after city that's huge, protected with walls, well fortified, with people who are, experienced and strong, and they are intimidated. You go from living in a tent dwelling to a city that's got walls around it and is being protected. That's intimidating, at the very least. That's all you get from this story so far.
Right.
So then they say, we're not going to be able to go against these people. They're stronger than we. And then the narrative tells us they brought up a bad report of the land, usually translated as evil report. Now they say... And let me back up, because I want to draw this distinction. This is absolutely key. If you notice, in the report that's accepted as is, they talk about how the people of the land are strong. That's what they say twice. They're all strong. But when their back's against the wall, when they want to emphasize their rejection of God's command to take the land, right? When they want to argue against Caleb, all of a sudden they embellish the report and they claim that all the people are of great height.
Oh.
See, that's something they had not said before. All of a sudden, to emphasize their point, now they say that within their bad report. So that's an embellishment right there.
It's like they're trying to talk themselves out of it.
I'm sorry?
It's like they're trying to talk themselves out of it.
They are, absolutely. Because Caleb was saying, let's go, let's get her done, as they say. And they're saying, no, we're not going to be able to. So then they bring up a report that is not accepted as is, as the first one was. And that's the problem. So then notice, by the way, in the first report, they said... the land flows with milk and honey, and this is the fruit. A good report of the land. But then in the bad report, the land through which we go is a land that devours its inhabitants. So that's a straight up contradiction. They just contradicted themselves. Moreover, if you noticed in the as is report, they talk about all the people groups they saw. Anakim, Amalekites, Hittites, Jebusites, Amorites, Canaanites.
Yeah.
How come they forgot to mention the most notable beings they saw? All of a sudden, in the bad report, oh, by the way, I can't believe we forgot this. We also saw Nephilim. And notice they're able to pinpoint where each people group lived. The Amalekites were in the Negev, Hittites, Jebusites, and Amorites in the hill country, Canaanites by the sea and along the Jordan. But then they say they saw the Nephilim. They're unable to pinpoint where they were. So that's a missing data point right there. They can't be specific, because my argument is they saw no such thing. They just made it up.
They got cold feet. They saw the walls of these fortified cities and got cold feet and tried to talk the people out of it.
And also, this is on the level of just common sense. If you saw beings that were so gigantic, they made you feel like a grasshopper, wouldn't you run back into camp and go, OMG, you won't believe what we saw? Or, the ancient version of OMG, like OM Yud or whatever. No, when they get back to camp, the first thing they talk about, hey, look at this fruit. Yeah, check out this fruit we found. Yeah. Oh, the land, that's great land. No, it doesn't make sense the way that they're doing things. So the whole thing stinks, in other words. The whole thing, the way the narrative is laid out, they present a report, it's accepted as is, but Caleb can see that the people are frightened, and so he says, never mind about this, let's go. And then these guys start building a case why they shouldn't, and it is within that case that's called an evil report, for which they were rebuked, that they contradict themselves, they embellish the report, and they claim they have seen Nephilim. And so here's the problem also. They make 3 claims about which the entire rest of the Bible knows nothing. That there's post-flood Nephilim, that Anakim are related to them, and that Nephilim are very, very tall. That it exists nowhere else in the whole entire Bible. Nowhere. So this is just saturated with problems. Absolutely saturated. Moreover, there's more problems.
Yeah.
In Deuteronomy 1:28, Moses is he's recalling this event. And when he talks about what happened, he doesn't even mention the Nephilim. He's saying these spies scared our people. They claimed all the people of the land were of great stature. That's it. He doesn't say a word about Nephilim. And textually, there's another problem. If you look at the Septuagint for this verse, it does refer to the Gigantes, the Nephilim, but there's no mention of Anakim in there. So now you can't even have Anakim related to them through that version. So the whole thing stinks from beginning to end, up and down, linguistically, contextually, in every way you can possibly think of it. The bottom line is they made a don't go in the woods type of tall tale. It was a fear-mongering scare tactic. That's it. It's a gigantic problem. Yet, the overwhelming majority of anybody who's out there talking about this, even the absolutely qualified Dr. Michael Heiser, they pick up this verse, just the verse, and they run with it. Because from this verse, they can get post-flood Nephilim, they can get Anakim related to them. So then, by the way, they'll go on to claim that Rephaim are related to Nephilim, which you can't even get if you even believe this. You just get that a subgroup is related to them. That's okay. And then you get that Nephilim are quote-unquote giants. You only get that from this one single verse. That's it. And so think about that. In Genesis 6, there was no physical description of Nephilim. None. You get that from this one single verse. So that leads me to conclude there is no reliable physical description of Nephilim. So we can't even really claim that they were unusually tall. We can't. In fact, I think it would be delicious if it turns out Nephilim were little people, but that's just for fun, because we have no reliable physical description.
No.
So essentially, the whole entire popular level and sometimes even scholarly teaching about Nephilim, that they live post-flood and their size, all of that is based on one single verse, which then becomes a hermeneutic, like a worldview, and then other verses are pulled into it to build this grand narrative that incidentally goes all the way out to the eschatology, the end days or last times, right? And so they'll formulate these fantastical views of the future based on this stuff. It doesn't exist. Let me just give you. I know I'm pretty much lecturing at this point, and I'm sorry for that.
It's fine. I like it.
So just as an example of how this verse becomes a worldview, and incidentally, Steve Quayle said that Nephilim are the Rosetta Stone for understanding the Bible. And he's also been quoted by Rob Skiba as having said that it's the Rosetta Stone for understanding history. And this is why Gary Wayne ends up with a book like he wrote, because he's viewing all of history for this. And to me, it's shocking. It's shocking that anybody could have even imagined saying such a thing, much less have turned it into their worldview, such as that Nephilim are the key to the Bible or history. Now, so what I was saying is this verse becomes a worldview, a hermeneutic, a means whereby to interpret. Let me give you a perfect example of that. Again, I asked us to pause at Genesis 6:4. The Nephilim were in the earth in those days and also after that. Okay, so what is that telling us? Or what have you heard? Let's just put it that way. What have you guys heard about what that's telling us?
That's the end of them. It's supposed to be, isn't it?
But hold on. But it says they were there in those days, and also after that.
Right. Okay. So up to the flood? Is that what we're saying? Isn't that the idea?
That's what anybody who you'll just happen to encounter who's written books about this, that's what they'll tell you. This is what it's telling you. Nephilim were in the earth in those days before the flood, and also after that, after the flood, right?
Right, yeah.
But
one of those 8 people were knocked up by an angel. That's where I'm getting from it.
Hey, you know what? Life. Yeah, that is one of the theories is something similar to that, but let's get to that.
Wildly inaccurate.
Yeah, we can get to those in just a minute. But did you notice that when I read Genesis 6:1-4, I mean, we read it through, and what is it about that would make you think it's talking about the flood? The flood wasn't mentioned in Genesis 1-4.
It's just like
So it's just like the flood. I'm sorry. Go on.
No, it's something that you automatically jump to, because when you think of Genesis, you think of Adam and Eve and the fall of Eve, and then you think of Noah and the flood. So it's in there in your subconscious somewhere that you connect these dots.
Right. But the point is, let's pretend I'm going to read Genesis 1. The whole chapter 2, 3, 4, we're going to do that line by line. We're going to read it as if it was for the first time. We haven't gotten to the flood yet in Genesis 6:4. We're not there yet. So we shouldn't even know about that yet. Okay. So we can't artificially insert that into what we're doing yet.
No.
In fact, okay, Genesis 6:4, the flood isn't mentioned for the very first time until verse 17. Of Genesis 6. That's a full 13 verses later. So you can't read past and then loop back and artificially insert it and miss, by the way, that the text tells you exactly what it means by those days and after that. So they were in the earth in those days. What days? Well, the verse tells you right here, when the sons of God came in unto the daughters of men and bare children to them. That's when. Well, when was that? Well, verse 1 told you. It came to pass when man begun to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born to them, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, and so on.
Right.
So that's told to us. Now, when was that? I have no idea. Maybe when, it could be as early as when Adam and Eve's children were having children. But regardless, those are those days. The verse told you, and then verse 1 told you. So when was after that? After that was after that. I mean, it's when they first started doing it and after they first started doing it, and yet all pre-flood.
Yep.
Now, I don't want to get into the issue of how long it was. I know people try to figure that stuff out, and God bless them. It's just I can't wrap my mind around trying to figure that out. But it could have been, let's say, 100. I don't know. If you're trying to say that when men began to multiply on the face of the earth and daughters were born to them, maybe that's when Adam and Eve children started having children. It could have been 1,500 years earlier. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Because it was those days when they first did it, and after they first did it, they were still doing it, but then the flood brought a full stop to that, period.
Yep.
And the only reason to think that those days and after that means past the flood is because you've read ahead to Numbers 13:33, and then you want to use that to interpret Genesis 6:4. But you don't need to do that. We just saw that the text is telling you what it means.
Yep. Yeah.
See, that's such a... I'm telling you, the whole scheme is based on that one verse. Wow. The whole scheme, post-flood Nephilim, rereading Genesis 6:4, that the Rephaim tribes were related to Nephilim, that Nephilim were very, very tall. All of it is based on one single verse. And it just happens to be an extremely problematic verse no matter how you look at it.
What a writing prompt. It's going to be the seed.
Yeah, just absolutely crushed my dreams about giants. Thank you very much.
Well, okay, now hold on a minute. Because I don't want to be misunderstood. Let's imagine that somehow, somewhere on Earth, there existed people who were 12 feet tall, whatever you want. My opinion is good for them. I hope they enjoy being that tall. What do I care? I don't have an issue with that. My issue is to, let's say, if we're discussing the Bible, we're in this little box of the Bible, we're talking about that. What does it tell to us? And it doesn't tell us about any of the things that are woven into very exciting sci-fi tall tales. So, as I mentioned earlier, what the Bible tells us is actually extremely simple and basic. Before the flood, there lived these angel-human hybrids called Nephilim. The last of them died in the flood. They never returned. They didn't survive. They never will return. And they're done with, period. Post-flood, you had a Canaanite people called Rephaim. Israelites battled against them quite a bit. End of story. I mean, bottom line. So now, to the issue of height, the Bible actually only gives us two specific heights of anybody and everybody, two heights. Then it makes what I like to think of as metaphorical statements. But that's about it. Then it offers subjective terms such as tall or very tall or great stature, which again is just based on a comparison. Yep. Now, the specific heights are of an unnamed Egyptian man who was 7 feet 5 inches. And the other one's Goliath. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've heard that Goliath was a Nephilim and that he had 6 fingers and 6 toes. It's just, no, that doesn't exist. For one, he was a Rephaim. Being a Philistine means he was a subgroup of Anakim or a subgroup of Rephaim, and that's why later in the text he's referred to as the Rephaim from Gath, right? From Gath. Yeah. That's where he lived. So the issue with Goliath is there's a discrepancy in manuscripts. So the Greek manuscripts have him as being shy of 10 feet. And the Hebrew ones, like the Dead Sea Scrolls, and even the writings of Flavius Josephus, they have him being as just shy of 7 feet. And frankly, I think it was just a minor issue in translation, because the Greek version was translated in Alexandria, Egypt, and the common Egyptian cubit was longer than the common Hebrew cubit. Right. So I think instead of doing the actual mathematical conversion between the two, I think the Greeks just said, hey, cubit. Okay, we'll use our cubit. So Goliath seems taller when he really wasn't. It's just that I think it's actually that simple. Besides which, I mean, look, his height wasn't the big deal. The big deal was that he was a champion, as the text refers to him. He was an experienced, successful warrior. That was the problem.
Well, it was a one-on-one duel, wasn't it? And the Philistines put up their champion to fight David.
Yeah. And incidentally, it was interesting. I recently attended a talk by Frank Turek, and a little girl asked him afterwards, why is it that David picked up 5 river stones, but he only used 1 against Goliath. And Turek rightly said, even if generically, well, I mean, there were other soldiers around, so just in case. And afterwards, I told Turek, you know what the Bible tells us? It tells us Goliath had 4 sons, right? So there you go. Just in case the boys want to get involved when Daddy went down, he had the 4 ready to go.
Fuck.
Genghis Khan it. Man in there.
Frank, do you say Frank Turek?
Turek, yeah.
Is he the guy who debated Christopher Hitchens famously?
Hitchens, yes.
I watched that debate. It was fascinating.
Yes.
Oh, you've met him?
Well, just briefly, I had him sign my book.
Yeah.
I had his book. I don't have enough faith to be an atheist.
That's
then
funny.
I handed him one of my books that I wrote on atheism.
Oh, cool.
So we made that exchange, yeah.
Cool.
So another thing you often hear is, well, but look at people like Goliath. They had spears as thick as a weaver's beam, and they had their helmets and their armor was just so heavy they had to be quote unquote giants. Well, okay, but you could go to any strongman competition nowadays or a powerlifting or weightlifting competition, and you could see guys that are right around 6 feet lifting 1,000 pounds. You don't necessarily have to be tall to be that strong.
And we have a preponderance to exaggerate as well, don't we? To be frank.
Honestly, I think that is something that has to be taken into consideration. So, for example, if I'm an explorer and you're a sovereign and you fund my exploration and I go off across the sea to a strange and foreign land and then I return, am I going to tell you, well, I guess we saw a different kind of monkey? I mean,
it's the land of milk and honey.
Sovereign, thank you for all your money and everything. But how about we saw giants, yeah, I mean, why not? And if you want to claim that you were successful in battle, you might as well claim you beat giants. Or if you lose in a battle, you might as well claim you lost to giants. You're going to, I think that I'm not using that as an argument from silence to discredit anything, but it is something about human nature that we really should take into consideration. In fact, that reminds me of a problem with actual claims to have the bones or skeletons of Nephilim. Even Josephus himself says, hey, if you want to see the bones of these Nephilim, you can go see them. We have them. But I'm not convinced Josephus was an anatomist. I mean, there's something to be said for that. If you were to spread a bunch of bones around and you ask me, okay, which one's human? Which one's pachyderm? Which one's bovine? Which one's a whale? Which one's a dinosaur? I could try a guess, but that is a real problem. And there's been actual research done on this kind of stuff that turns out that the bones that are often claimed to be of gigantic humans turn out to be just that. They're pachyderm, like mastodons or mammoths. They're whales or dinosaurs. And in an interesting point made by one of the researchers who wrote a book about this, she says, let's say that you found the bones of a mammoth. And, well, you wouldn't know what you're really looking at. But commonsensically, you would lay it down on the ground. And you would lay it down in the form of a human being standing up, right? Yeah. In other words, it's two-dimensional. You're laying them flat. Yeah. You're not actually building up the skeletons like we do in our museums. So if you were to do that, it looks like a giant human. And to boot, you would have a skull with a giant hole in the center. And if you don't know that's for the trunk, you would naturally interpret that as an eye socket. And there you have a story of a cyclops.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense.
Commonsensical stuff, yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Now, So those are the two specific heights. And incidentally, my point about the average Hebrew male those days being 5 feet or 5'3" is important. When you notice that the first time the Bible talks about King Saul, it specifies that he was outstanding because he was a head and shoulder above the average person. So again, he was like, maybe let's just go with 6'5". And that was like, wow, man, look at this guy. It's noteworthy.
Yeah.
And to us, it's like, he's not that tall. Come on. It's not a big deal. Then you have metaphors such as Amos telling us that the Amorites were as strong as oaks. Okay, now, does that statement impress any of you as if the implication is that we now have to conduct some kind of mathematical ratio-based calculation between the strength of an oak and the strength of a person?
No, it's totally metaphorical statement, isn't it?
That's how I would take it, right?
Yeah.
But Amos also said that their height is as the height of the cedars. And I can't even tell you how many of these pop researchers say, let's look up, the cedars in that region of the world are 40 to 60 feet tall. So Amos was telling us that the Ammonites were 40 to 60 feet tall. Wow. It just, on a commonsensical level, he's telling us these guys are big and strong. I'm not convinced you have to go beyond that, especially when you do it for their height, but you don't bother doing it with their strength. Anyhow. And then you have the issue of King Og of Bashan,
yep.
Right? Who you'll read in 1,000 sources was 12 to 13 feet tall. And you know how we know that? Because we're told the size of his bed.
Yeah.
Okay, to begin with, we are not told his height. We're told the size of an object that he owned. Let's just get that straight.
Yeah.
Okay. And to just boil all this down, okay, if you were to measure my bed, yeah, you could subtract a foot from it and you would get a reasonable idea of my height. You would also think I'm 5 times wider than I actually am, by the way. And the bottom line of that one is we don't know his personal height. And as for his bed, well, you really shouldn't compare it to mine because I'm not an ancient king. I'm not a pagan king sharing his bed with who knows. We don't need to get into the details, but harems and all of that. But we don't even have to go there because the thing is, we have found, archaeologically have found what are known as ritual beds that match the dimensions of that bed of King Og. And they were not meant to be slept on. They were almost like altars. They were ritual beds upon which the gods supposedly came down and mated. They were ritual objects. Nobody actually slept on them.
Oh, wow.
So there's that. Yeah, and trying to think if there's anything else, because between the specific heights and the metaphors, that's just about it. I mean, listening to these guys, you'd think that the Bible makes this big to do about all this stuff, and it just doesn't. It just doesn't.
Well, Ken, I mean, you've given us a real reality check tonight.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
It shows the importance of, 2 things, I would say. Reading things in the correct context and going back to the original sources and reading them. Because it's so tempting to get sucked down this train and believe it's probably the wrong word, but to sort of almost fantasize about this thing. I just find it... Sorry, go on.
If I may, one thing I wanted to make clear, like what you stated about Gary Wayne, what he states at the very beginning of the book, put me in that category as well.
Yeah.
I'm a Jew who eventually came to accept Jesus as my Messiah, so I'm a straight-up Bible believer.
Yeah.
that is out there. That is me. And maybe that's all the more reason why I don't just take what these guys say at face value, because incidentally, I was doing that. I mean, I've never attended a sermon where a pastor focused on this stuff. And when I read through the Bible, I would just read past it. It's not something that caught my attention. So when I started listening to these guys and watching their videos, man, are they ever exciting to listen to. And they make so much sense, and the way they're able to pull all this stuff together from mythology and archaeology, it's so exciting and it makes so much sense. And then as is common to me, it took one thing. I saw one single YouTube comment with somebody saying, yeah, I used to go along with these guys teach, but I looked into it myself and it didn't pan out. And I thought, whoa, wait a minute. Okay, I have to look into this now. And here I am years later, just saying, I'm afraid that bottom line, on a factual point, when we actually slow down, as we've been doing tonight, and we think about these things and we break them down and we look at them in detail, it just doesn't pan out. It doesn't. Now, again, this doesn't mean no one has ever existed who was taller than 8 or 9 or 10 feet. It doesn't mean that all of these stories about quote unquote giants from all over the world are just make believe. It doesn't mean any of that. It just means when we look at what the Bible says specifically, this is what it says and this is what it doesn't say, and it's demonstrably so. That's all I'm saying.
Well, I think it's great. I've enjoyed listening to your mini lecture. I definitely learnt a lot, and it's this lesson that we've got to sort of take a step back and try and not get sucked into the things and try and. Right. I like to think that I've got a really open mind, but the danger is if you have a really open mind, is you can get sucked into wormholes, and you've got to sort of stop yourself and try and take a step back and do due diligence is the key, I think, isn't it?
Yes.
But it's been great. Thanks for coming, Ken. I think it's been fascinating. We'd love to have you back.
Thank you for having me. Yeah, it's been really interesting, and I appreciate how receptive you and your team have been, not just of what I'm saying, but just of the fact that we do need to slow down and iron these things out, because henceforth, I guarantee you, now when you find a video on YouTube, right from the beginning, you'll say, well, wait a minute. How could you, in one sentence, go from the specific Hebrew word Nephilim to the vague one giant? And then I know you're talking about Rephaim, but you're not telling us that. Now you're going to start seeing, well, you're being so unspecific about this stuff.
Yeah.
At least that's what happens to me nowadays. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. No, slow down.
It's really interesting, and it fascinates me so much how we're, as a culture, we're so obsessed with this one little tribe in the land of Canaan and their story, and our whole civilization is built on the story of this one little tribe, and it just it really interests me, and why I've been trying to learn bits about the history. And it's great to speak to someone who's read so much about this and has got so much knowledge about it. It's been brilliant.
Well, I'll tell you one thing I've noticed is, I've had various interests throughout the years. So I've looked into the New Age quite a bit. I've looked into occultism quite a bit. I've looked into atheism quite a bit. I've looked into aliens and UFOs quite a bit. My own culture quite a bit. And something all of them are 99% anti-biblical, or say anti-Christian or anti-Jewish and Christian, and 1% anti-anything else. Then there's got to be something to that. Cannot be a coincidence that people as New Agers, occultists, ufologists, and atheists, and just our pop culture, how come all of them can agree that the Bible's the only one up for public ridicule and attack, and virtually nothing else. I'm just saying that cannot be a coincidence.
Yeah.
And another thing I noticed is your your shirt, not the shirt, the yellow Los Pollos Hermanos thing from what we started the show with, which is Breaking Bad.
Well, right. Well, we'll say thanks, Ken. We'll call it a day at this one, at this time, and stay on the line for us while we play ourselves out.
Very well. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Thanks for coming. Don't forget to check the link in the description. Truthfreethinker.com. Got it. I did it. Back in a flash.
Nice t-shirt, Ben.
Oh, sorry.
Yes.
Hang on. Right then, we're back.
The dwarf, the cripple, and the mother of madness.
That was our chat. Our chat with the legend that is Ken Ammi.
Can wash it over me? Can wash it over me?
What do you think?
That's flip themed as well. You couldn't have picked a more perfect song.
I thought it was
How come Ken gets his own jingle?
I think
Everyone gets their own jingle from now. He's set a precedent.
Yeah.
I think Ken was worth it. I thought it was a very thoughtful, considered, thought-provoking guest. I thought it was brilliant.
Yeah, he just missed out on the aliens at the end there, though.
Next time.
Yeah.
Hopefully Ken will come back further down the line because with loads to go at.
Oh, Ben's gone.
No, I'm still here. It's just cycling.
We did an hour pretty much on Genesis. So I think there was lots more to go at. So
10
Phil
minutes.
Collins next week.
Yeah, 10 minutes on a death penalty.
Oh, you've got a new T-shirt there, Ben.
I have. Here it is. It's
Where
on my
could you
body.
where could you get that T-shirt from?
There is one. There is one of these T-shirts. It's currently touching my skin.
Touching cloth.
This is a prototype T-shirt that may or may not become available for purchase.
Yeah, so we need some feedback, really, don't we?
Yeah, do you like it? Do you hate it? Have I used the correct current? I know I have.
Yeah, who said what's on your T-shirt?
Well, it's some words. The first word is current, and the second word is grape.
Currant. Grape.
Oh, can't.
It's slightly censored version.
Yeah.
It's high street friendly.
Housekeeping.
Oh.
Housekeeping.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
What's going on a bit this week? Oh, we just.
Housekeeping. Housekeeping.
I couldn't find my notes then. Yeah, what do we need for the housekeeping? We need iTunes reviews. We need you to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Send us news articles, clips, videos, artwork, etc. Send us memes for Instagram.
Memes.
You know, I reposted a meme that one of our producers sent t'other day. So that's good. Right. Anything that provides content for us and frees up more time for us to concentrate on this that we do every week. So, yeah, that's good. How else can you become a producer?
You buy a T-shirt. Eventually.
Toss us a fucking coin.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty, oh valley of plenty.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil.
Toss a coin to your witcher, oh valley of plenty.
It really bothers me. Because I believe I have an issue in this respect.
Yeah, toss us a motherfucking coin in the style of Andrew Shatkin.
Or you could send us tiny burps in the style of Andrew Shatkin.
Yep. Go to the AmishInquisition.com and look up the How to Become a Producer tab.
Yeah.
Or click on the PayPal button and toss us a coin. You know.
Yeah.
Got a birthday this week, Dave Gornall. It's his birthday.
Big Dave.
Foo Fighters.
Dave Grohl. Dave Cornwall. Dave Gornall. Happy birthday. I'm holiday this week, so I've got on the wine a bit early. Oh no!
Oh yeah, it's holiday, isn't it?
So happy birthday.
How did you hold it together during the interview?
I'm just a pro, aren't I?
Stitute.
I have another announcement. An anniversary to celebrate tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
3 years.
My anniversary tomorrow.
On your own?
With my good lady wife.
All right. Does she know?
How many years?
She normally forgets.
18.
18.
18 years, and you know, we've never had a fight.
A fist fight.
So, happy anniversary.
Happy anniversary, Phil.
Does your missus know that you've not had a fight?
She slapped me once. I remember her slapping me in Rope Roll once.
Oh, yes, I remember that. That was dark.
It was violent, wasn't it?
Yeah, you were. I think you probably deserved it, though.
Was that the same night pool balls were being thrown around?
Who knows?
Your mouth.
A producer could submit.
Your mouth can talk
the answers.
Can talk you into a world of problems, especially when you're a young man and you're a bit of an idiot and alcohol's involved. I learned my lesson. I don't want to be, a victim of domestic abuse again, so just keep quiet now.
There you go. Problem solved with violence.
Right, we better thank the producers for this week. We've got Ammi the Artist, Diogenes of Sign Up, Tamburista 2020, The 100th Monkey, Night Ninja, Gav Scott, Raymond Jet Squad, and Nick Hall. They're just so amazing, aren't they?
They are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Thanks a lot.
I think you're hitting the point, Phil.
They are.
Yeah.
So. Amazing. And their love.
I've been coming to terms with the fact that
I'm a Marxist.
Because I'm literally a communist.
The dwarf, the
Current.
the
Grape.
the
Cunt.
the
Communist.
the
Homophobe.
the
Misogynist.
the cripple and the mother of
Ronnie Pickering!
From hell.
It really bothers me. Because
Woo! Thank you. Thank you for another week. It's been a good week, producer wise. Loads of stuff sent us, so thanks. Keep it up. You know what to do. Go to the website. Emails, I forgot to say, you can email us. Emails at theamishinquisition@gmail.com. Fucking hell. Right. I'm just not with it tonight.
3 sheets.
Yep.
COVID-19 news.
Put on your fucking muzzle if you go to the shop.
The magic vaccine. A big fat shot in the ass.
From hell.
Oh! It's just, super painful.
Like a judgment day and terminating.
More lives this year than any other year for the past 100 years.
2 million people have to die.
This is such a crock of shit.
This is
Dr. Bhattacharya.
It is. It's COVID-19 news. Oh my God. sorry to wank on about lockdowns. You know, the common refrain from people concerned about ICUs being flooded and the health service collapsing and all the rest of it. I just thought I'd pull this clip from, I mentioned Ivor Cummings.
Mm-hmm.
He was on Trigonometry, which is a podcast I listen to quite regularly, and he was talking about this issue of ICU overloading and whatnot. So I thought you might find this valuable.
Described.
So you're saving a couple of years of granny, and in the process you're killing off a father of 3, a mother of 2, someone in their 20s who kills themselves because of depression, etc., etc. You're trading people who are. Look, obviously any death is a tragedy. Someone in their 80s deserves to live as long as they possibly could. But the point is, we're in the situations where there are trade-offs. And what we've chosen to do is we're trading an extra year or 2 or 3 for someone who may be very ill already versus someone in the prime of their life.
Yeah, and I'd say an extra year or 2 or 3. Professor Levitt has done estimates of this, and I'd say that's hugely generous. And again, I bring you back to Ireland as a typical case. We have the data. 95% of them were so moribund or heading towards death already that they didn't give them ICU. 95%. So when you think about that, you're not talking about all the people who died had a few years each. No way. It's irrational.
That was news to me.
Wow.
As far as the Ireland figures go, 95% of COVID deaths were too old or moribund to be afforded ICU.
That's unbelievable, isn't it?
Crazy, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
I can understand. I think it's a legitimate concern to be worried about ICUs being overwhelmed. The nature of our system is that it's meant to run at capacity all the time.
Yeah.
Anything below capacity is inefficiency.
Yeah.
It's meant to be, planned to run at capacity. If you've got a concern about it being overwhelmed, build more fucking capacity.
Mm-hmm.
Which we did to an extent, didn't we, with the Nightingales, which were mothballed because we didn't need them.
Yeah.
So, anyway, sticking with the negative effects. Sorry to bang on about this, the negative effects of lockdown, but I think this is important, and this is something that I learned this week, another negative effect, which is happening in Australia, which is pretty... if you're easily upset, maybe just take your headphones out for 30 seconds or so.
Startling revelations tonight about the deaths of 4 babies at the Women's and Children's Hospital in the past month, with doctors saying they weren't given a chance because the surgery they needed isn't done in South Australia.
Medicos pleading for urgent action, with fears more babies could lose their lives if nothing is done.
At 13 months of age, Charlotte's health rapidly deteriorated. Her only chance of survival was a transfer to Melbourne for the cardiac care she needed.
We almost lost her a few times the day that the Melbourne team flew in to retrieve her.
The now 2-year-old is one of around 100 children sent interstate each year for urgent medical care, because Adelaide is the only state mainland capital that doesn't do paediatric cardiac surgery.
It can be done, it's done in the other states.
And really a child's life shouldn't come down to chance.
The problem exacerbated during the COVID pandemic because medical transfers to Melbourne can't happen. Instead, patients are being sent to Sydney. But in the last month, 4 babies have died.
Who are unable to be transferred, who almost certainly would have benefited from on-site cardiac surgery and an ECMO support system.
The significant mental distress that this not only has caused the doctors but the clinicians generally in that unit is indescribable.
The chiefs of the Women's and Children's wouldn't comment on the deaths, but admit a paediatric cardiac unit would help.
Certainly some...
So the state of play is Adelaide doesn't have the function to do heart surgery on babies.
That in itself is unbelievable.
So, yeah, I mean...
Even before you get to the whole sort of COVID and...
Yeah, so the standard procedure is to fly them thousands of miles away.
Yeah.
To not thousands of miles, wherever it is.
You can kind of understand it here, where we have specialist children's hospitals. There's one in Northwest, one in London, or whatever, because we're a tiny country. But Australia is huge, isn't it? But anyway, go on. So you're going to say something?
No, that's the situation. The problem is it's been He said it's been exacerbated. So Adelaide is on the south coast, and they would normally, these babies who need this surgery would be transferred to the state next door, which is Victoria, where Emperor Dan is running the show. Victoria's where they smash your car windows in if you're trying to leave the state. That fucker. Yeah. Right, so they can't go to Melbourne, so they're having to go to Sydney, which is in New South Wales. It's like an extra 700-800 kilometres.
Yeah.
And obviously the capacity is reduced because there'll only be so many hospitals that can do this surgery, and there are question marks that babies are dying because they can't go to Melbourne and they're having to go to Sydney.
Yeah.
Unforeseen circumstances.
Yeah.
Consequences.
Up, isn't it? But this is the thing now that surely there's so much counter argument now to how it's all been handled. I just don't get why.
There's not. Only from us here on the fucking Amish Inquisition.
I know, but this is what
watch the BBC, ITV, Question Time. They're all for it. When are we going to lock down again and order?
That's what I was going to say, is that, there's so much evidence out there of the harm that it's doing as compared to what it's achieving, and people are still in favour of more. Give us more. I don't get it. Anyway.
There was a report from the ONS this week. At least 26,000 more people than usual have died at home during the coronavirus pandemic, potentially because they couldn't or didn't want to go to hospital, according to ONS. Between March the 20th, the week lockdown started, and September 11th, a total of 86,000 people died in private homes rather than hospitals. The number, which is a surge of 43.6% on the average for that time of year, includes fatalities of any cause, with COVID-19 only linked to 3.3% of them.
Wow.
So this extra 43,000 people who are dying at home, 96.7% of them aren't dying at home of COVID.
Mm-hmm.
But they're scared to go into hospital in case they catch it, or what?
Well, taking up resources, I guess.
I'm taking up resources, yeah.
Oh, it's been cancelled.
Or cancelled, yeah.
Cleared the decks.
Yeah.
Deaths in private homes have remained well above average since March. Yet in hospitals and care homes, the number of deaths slipped below average in June. Once the first wave of COVID had blown over, it's now risen slightly above. Statisticians said the change represented a redistribution in where people die. Experts are not sure whether the statistics are necessarily bad. Many people choose to die at home rather than in hospital. But warn people might have missed out on proper end-of-life care, which includes painkillers, and that some people may have actually been saved if they're at a hospital. Yeah, I don't know. It's fucked up.
Was that an extra 43,000 people have died, not just at home?
At home. So
we were expecting that amount of people to die, but they've died at home.
It's not excess mortality. There's like a ratio between where people die, either in hospital or at home or in a care home, and the number of people who have died at home has gone up nearly 50%, which is troublesome. Anyway, Matt, you said last week, I think, or maybe the week before, that you might be reluctant to get the vaccine.
Why? You're going to say that it's been lined up for NHS frontline workers next week?
I wasn't going there. I just want to quell your worries.
Is it just going to be super painful?
Big fat shot in the ass from hell. I signed a petition weeks ago one of these online petitions, prevent any restrictions on those who refuse a COVID vaccination.
Right.
You know how it works with an online petition. If they get so many respondents, the government has to respond. And then if it goes over 100,000, I think they have to debate it in Parliament.
Yeah.
Maybe. So I got the response. This will quell your fears. There are currently no plans to place restrictions on those who refuse to have any potential COVID-19 vaccine.
There you go.
Currently no plans. You know, that's politician speak, isn't it?
For there are plans.
Yeah.
You can see it definitely being linked to travel, couldn't you? Having a COVID passport.
Oh, well, it's I'm glad you've brought that up because, again, Ireland are leading the way. Check this shit out.
Health Passport Ireland is created to protect our society and our economy. Built in Ireland by the Rock U Group, the system uses the very best COVID-19 testing, combined with the latest mobile technologies. Health Passport Ireland is powered by proven and validated systems, allowing us all to take safer steps in our return to our normal way of life. Here's how it works. With Health Passport Ireland, everyone can now be tested for COVID-19 at any time, which helps to protect you, your family, our jobs, and our economy. Your COVID-19 test will be performed with highly accurate serological or swab tests. Your test is performed by a medical professional. After your COVID-19 test, an authorised healthcare administrator creates your Health Passport Ireland account. Your login details will be emailed to you immediately with a link to download your Health Passport mobile app. The authorised healthcare administrator securely updates your COVID-19 test results in your Health Passport. Once activated, you can easily display your COVID-19 status on your mobile. Your Health Passport can be scanned if you wish, which helps protect those around us. Your COVID-19 status will efficiently display as green, amber or red, dependent on your test results. This allows us to go about our daily activities in a safer way. We can all use Health Passport Ireland in many ways, such as travel.
Travel?
Hospitality.
Going to the pub or a hotel?
Education.
Kids going to school? You better have had your vaccine if you want your kids to go to public school.
Healthcare.
Hospital, obviously.
Construction.
Work? You want to go to work? You better have your COVID vaccine in your app on your phone.
Offices, entertainment, visits and much, much more. Naturally, the validity of your COVID-19 test will expire over time, so an automatic reminder will be sent when it's time to be tested again. Your status will move to amber when your test period has expired. Health Passport Ireland does not use Bluetooth or track your location. This preserves your privacy.
Preserves your privacy? It's a fucking joke.
The systems can work in harmony with existing government contact tracing apps.
Oh yeah, tie it into the contact tracers as well, so they know where you are.
When a vaccine becomes available, your official vaccination status can also be displayed within your Health Passport. You can even keep a diary of your international travel and events you have attended.
Yeah, keep a diary. Just make it even easier for us. Fuck it.
Health Passport Ireland can be linked to existing secure medical systems if required. For example, at your GP or hospital. You can visit www.healthpassport.
That's a glimpse.
Cast your mind back.
It's a glimpse into the future, that.
If you can, try and remember pre-Brexit Britain. Do you remember the last kick-off before all that was about ID cards? There was a big kerfuffle about ID cards. So do you think the same kind of backlash that we saw against ID cards will come up against COVID passport?
No, because people have been scared. Fear is the motivator.
Yeah, well, they tried it with ID cards, didn't they? Via terrorism, fear of terrorists and terrorism. Didn't really work.
David Blunkett tried it. He was
tried a few times, haven't they, recently?
He was banging. David Blunkett was banging the drum for ID cards, and it would be biometric. Yeah, but this is the way it's going, I think.
How long are you going to have a health passport for? The rest of your life?
Yeah.
And just to be put when is it? You're going to have like hepatitis B on, AIDS, HIV, everything, or is it just this COVID?
He'll have everything. No, he'll have everything. Eventually,
that's what I mean. So then, does that not then have consequences for like travel and health insurance? Travel insurance and health insurance and
getting a job? Your DNA testing shows that you are susceptible to the following conditions, and therefore we don't think you're going to last 5 years.
No.
So,
has anybody ever watched Gattaca?
Yeah. Yeah. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah.
Hackers, maybe. It's a hacker's dream, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, it gets worse because I've got a clip from Emperor Andrews, Emperor Dan from Victoria, the guy where they smash your car windows in. He's going one step further. Apologies for the quality of the audio. This was recorded off someone's TV, so you have to listen hard, but it's worth it.
That the notion that everyone who returns...
He's talking about people who come back into the country and the 14-day quarantine. But, we're not going to have to do that 14-day quarantine forever because, we've got plans.
From everywhere goes into 14 days of a hotel. That may not be the policy going forward as we look to the entirety of 2021, for instance, not knowing when a vaccine turns up. That would then mean that you've got options. And one of those options might be to say to people, and other countries in the world are doing this, here is an electronic device that means we can be certain about where you are. But there is some technology that can actually monitor your vital signs as well. So it becomes something that's not just to ensure you stay where you're supposed to stay. It's also a way in which we can monitor whether you're healthy or otherwise.
It's really...
Stay where you're supposed to stay, and let's just keep
an eye. So we're being
out.
Tagged.
It's essentially an ankle bracelet that monitors your vitals, just so we know where you're supposed to be. You're staying where you're supposed to be, and that we can check up on you.
Fucking hell.
Yeah, I'm a conspiracy theorist, and people would laugh at me if I suggested shit like this 12 months ago. So the more you listen to David Icke, the more you think, oh, actually, he's been right. He's sort of ahead of the game, really.
The Queen is a lizard.
Technocratic system, oh god, it's just it doesn't.
Even a fucked clock is right 2 times a day, isn't it? They say.
Yeah.
2021, he's saying next year. Get that stuff going.
Surely, is it not supposed to be finished by Christmas or something? Are we not done?
12 weeks it was, wasn't it?
Easter, wasn't it? Done by Easter.
Fuck's sake.
There's been some research about excess deaths. So excess deaths is probably the most reliable metric to sort of judge where we're at because you can't really fake it. And some work's been done on the year 2020 to date and how our excess deaths compare. Would you like to take a stab if you went for the last 27 years where the year 2020 would land as a worst
excess death year?
Excess death year.
I'm going to say health has improved for older people, maybe. So I'm going to say it was, if number one is the best.
No, number one's the worst.
Number one's the worst. I'd say 20 out of 27.
You think that this year's the 20th, the 8th best year of the last 27 years for excess death?
Yeah.
Why are we locking ourselves in our houses then?
Because nobody looks at the numbers properly, do they? We're having to do this because everyone else is doing it.
It's the 8th worst year of the last 27 years.
19, is it?
It's the 8th worst year for excess deaths of the last quarter of a century.
8th.
Yeah, so, nothing out of the ordinary.
What's the worst year? What was the worst year?
Don't have that information. 17 was a bad year. 17-18 flu season, we got hit really hard.
Right.
Interestingly, we've had two very mild winter seasons, 1819 and 1920. And so have Sweden. You know, people, when you say, well, look at Sweden, how well they're doing, and they always say, oh, well, look at the Nordics. They've got a far worse case for death per million number than the other Nordics. But when you look at the excess deaths for the other Nordics, they had a harsher 1819 and 1920 winter season than Sweden. So, yeah, it's interesting. I don't know.
So, are we saying that this year? Are they saying that this year's excess deaths is worse than 17, 18, 19?
We had 2 mild years. We're just making up. So we had a lot of. We had a lot of flammable material. We had a lot of vulnerable. We had a greater vulnerable population. That's why we've been hit hardest. Right, what the fucking government does to make head and eye tail don't make any fucking difference. How many susceptible people do you have? That's what counts.
Saying now, aren't they, that it's coming out? I'm reading a little bit more in sort of mainstream news that the lockdown's not really having any impact on people's behaviours anymore. I'll put a link in the description. There's a tiny URL webpage you can go to, and it's got all the scientific papers that show that lockdowns did nothing, which you won't find, in the mainstream. But you can go and look at them and assess them for yourself, because we know because of Sweden, they didn't make any fucking difference. And we know look at influenza. You would think with the social distancing and the masks and everything else that influenza rates would be affected. They're not. It's pointless. But anyway. Got some local COVID news. Oh.
Hello, I'm Andy. I'm the owner of Ships and Giggles. We charge 1 penny for our food, but you can pay more if you want. We've had to do this because in desperate times calls for desperate measures, and it's more than just about the free food. It's to raise awareness for our industry, which is closing left, right and centre, and we need the government to act better than they are, because as a result we're doing this in order for everyone to benefit. Whether it's someone who's got no money or suffering financial difficulties, whether it's to keep people in jobs, whether it's to keep us busy, keep us sane, this is the reason we're doing it. There's no reason why I wouldn't.
Yeah, I was quite shocked when I went on the metro and I saw Andy Mack. He's a bit of a celeb round our parts.
Is he?
Yeah, not familiar with him.
No.
Do you remember, was it called Mac's Bar?
Oh, did he run that, Max?
Yeah.
It got shut down for always letting underage people in.
Allegedly.
He's gone to the Ships and Giggles, has he? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And he was in the metro.
Right.
And Shane from P-Town, quick off the dart. Got him. He's just released a podcast where he's talking to him.
Obviously. He's always there, that P-Town, isn't he?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's like a ninja, podcasting ninja. I've got some other local COVID news.
Go on then.
The COVID roadblock on Fletcher Road has been lifted, finally.
Which one's Fletcher Road?
Where Screwfix and all the builders merchants are.
Where was there a roadblock?
They shut the road at one end.
Why?
Because of COVID.
I don't compute.
Have you not seen these roadblocks? Right? Do you not go out?
Yeah.
I've seen roadblocks. I've seen temporary cycle lanes.
Yeah, COVID bike routes.
So they've had the bike routes, and they've just been shutting roads. I mean, in March they shut Fletcher Road at the Deepdale Road end. They just dropped these. They look like giant planters, like wooden planters that are just filled with hardcore, just weights, and they just drop them.
Yeah. There's one off London Road as well.
There is. Drop them in middle at road, put a COVID sign on it, just shut the road. So you had to go. You had to go down Deepdale, turn left at Prison, route back to get into Industrial Estate, and then fuck around on way around, on way out. But
what's the point in that?
Because they're just fucking dicks, aren't they? What is the point?
I don't know.
We've got a pandemic. We better shut some minor roads.
That's how the virus gets around.
Yeah, I never understood it, but yeah, just a massive inconvenience for me because I go there every day pretty much. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's been lifted, so
yeah.
Right, last piece of COVID news.
Oh, good.
Maureen from Barnsley.
Oh, classic Maureen.
She was catapulted to stardom this week after this, this classic Vox Pop.
Yeah.
I think it's all ridiculous. We should never have been in lockdown. All the people who are vulnerable should have been helped and kept on safe. And all the rest of us, I'm 83. I don't give a sod. I look at it this way. I've not got all that many years left of me. And I'm not going to be fastened in a house when the government have got it all wrong. How can we get the country on its feet, money-wise? Where's all the money? By the end of this year, there's going to be millions of people unemployed, and you know who's going to pay for it? All the young ones. Not me, because I'm going to be dead.
Wow. I think I've got a new idol.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, summed it up for me.
True. It's probably what my mum says, that, to be honest with you. She's 79.
Oh, fuck
it.
If I were 80, I wouldn't want to be old up at home.
No.
You've only got so long left. You want to see your family, don't you?
Yeah.
But, you know, Neil Ferguson says otherwise. So.
Fucking hell. I mean, it's been in the news a lot, him, recently, about sort of like the efficacy of the lockdown and stuff. He's still heading up that thing at Imperial College, isn't he? Task Force or whatever.
The problem with SAGES is that they don't have any proper immunologists on board. They've lots of mathematicians. And one thing that's going to come out of this is that the public's confidence in bodies like SAGE and science is going to really take a big hit, unfortunately. But, you know. Shall we move on from COVID news?
Yes.
Yeah.
Matt, you and your good lady wife had a bit of a shock this week, didn't you, when you went to watch a Disney classic?
We did, yeah. It was Jungle Book, and it comes with an advisory warning that some of the things in there are potentially offensive. I can't remember the exact wording, but they said they won't take it down because we should discuss these things or something.
I mean, we don't let wolves raise our children anymore like we used to. So maybe that's what it's referring to.
Yeah, I was just and we were stumped as to what it was in Jungle Book, and then Phil enlightened us.
It was King Louis, wasn't it?
It's King Louis is thought of as a lazy stereotype of a black man or something.
Who's your favourite character in the Jungle Book?
Baloo.
Yeah, who's your second favourite?
Bagheera.
Oh, I'd have said King Louis.
Really?
Baloo, King Louis, yeah.
Well, the thing is about Baloo. I mean, how do you determine the race of any of them?
They're fucking animals.
They're animals, yeah.
Yeah. It's a nonsense, isn't it?
I mean, I suppose there is a way that King Louis speaks that you would associate with a black guy, I guess.
Because he is a black guy?
I don't know. And I suppose, in some ways, I would have thought Baloo could be a black guy.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, they do that call and repeat, don't they, when they're singing? I want to be like you. And it's a jazz song. And it's like, it's scat, isn't it? They're improvising and...
It's scat?
Yeah, like the scat man. It's that form of jazz. I mean, it's an artistic expression. It's nothing to do with fucking...
Yeah, at first I thought it was like to do with the depictions of like Indians wearing loincloths or something. It wasn't, you know, we shouldn't be thinking of Indians like that anymore or something. I don't know.
The thing is, I thought the way Mowgli, and there's only really two humans in it, Mowgli and the girl he meets at the end. And I thought that was like a tactful representation of a native people. I didn't think it was...
No?
So I don't think that was it, was it? It was. I think it was just King Louis.
It must be King Louis. But the other thing is I remember watching the original one. Is the one I watched the most of all the Disney films, except for Cinderella. And it was King Louis used to freak me out for some reason, though. He was scary. I thought he was scary. Right. Him and Carr, obviously.
Ah, yeah.
Well, because they're trying to capture him, aren't they?
What's that, sorry?
They try and capture him, don't they? They try and abduct him, the monkeys.
Oh, yeah. I found all of the monkeys scary, when he grab him. Because Baloo's, like, lovely, isn't he?
Yeah.
You don't want to be kidnapped from Baloo. Baloo's Go on.
No, come on.
I was just going to say, have you watched I say live action, but, CGI one?
Yeah.
Because I find Baloo's at the beginning of that he's a bit meaner in the live action one, where he's got him climbing up the cliffs to poke off the honey for him.
I mean, essentially, Baloo the bear is a selfish nihilist, isn't he? No responsibilities.
Yeah.
It's the bare necessities. That's all we need. He won't pick up a weight and carry it.
As is his burden.
He won't bear his cross.
No.
It actually reminds me, I've got this clip, one of the producers sent us this clip from Larry Elder. Are you familiar with Larry Elder? He's a black guy from America. I think he does talk radio. He's made documentaries, like a political, social commentator.
Right.
And he was talking to like some sort of crowd. I don't know whether it was some sort of demonstration or anything, but I thought it was interesting what he had to say on this sort of issue of race.
We are being manipulated. That's right. The number one problem facing the black community is not racist cops. It's not income inequality. It's not climate change. The number one problem facing the black community is the lack of fathers in the home. Yeah. That's right. 70% of black kids are raised without fathers. And forget about Elder. Barack Obama said a kid raised without a father is 5 times more likely to be poor and commit crime, 9 times more likely to drop out of school, 20 times more likely to end up in jail. Now, the question is, why have we gone from 25% of black kids born outside of wedlock in 1965 to 70% today? And the answer is, it's the welfare state. The welfare state is incentivizing women to marry the government and allowing men to abandon their financial and moral responsibility. And that's what we ought to be talking about. But we're not having that conversation because, again, they are manipulating us. They want us to think about racism.
Well, that's pretty insightful, and it sort of ties into the overreaction we have now from the corporate world. Do you remember, like 3 years ago, when it was just a bunch of crazy students, and when Brett Weinstein got kicked out of Evergreen College, and it's just these young kids, they don't know what's going on yet, and it's just in the academy, whereas now it's coming into the corporate world and Disney, this ideology. So I thought that sort of tied in, actually, that clip we got sent. So it's not the only film. I've got a list here.
Not of all films, surely.
16 films have the warning, including The Goonies.
Yeah,
Right.
I could see Goonies being there for obvious reasons.
Gets a pass.
For the Chinese lad. What?
Next film.
No, go on. What's your reason for The Goonies?
Because of the Hey You Guys guy.
Yeah.
Nope.
Because he's got disability. No,
it was the Chinese guy, because it is portrayed as a stereotype of being good at technology and mathematics.
All right.
That's why the Goonies.
I thought they were.
Well, yes, they are. Well, we all know that stereotypes are based, have a seed of reality. That's why they work as a stereotype. Yeah, but you can't admit that. What was the next film on the list? Aliens.
Oh, is this because of the Latina?
Is it robots?
Aliens follows the story of Ellen Ripley, played by Sigourney Weaver, who is sent to a planet to make contact with the terraforming colony. Terraforming Connolly. And has to fight them to survive. A spokesperson for Sky said, The film contains the disclaimer because it features a non-Hispanic actress playing the role of a Hispanic character.
Oh, so she wasn't a Latina.
What?
Right? She called Hernandez or something in it. So she wasn't really...
God, what was her name?
No, like no one remembers. So what's?
I can remember her because she was.
She had the headband.
Yeah, the first time I thought, she's probably a lesbian.
Vasquez.
Yeah. It's either Hernandez or Vasquez, isn't it?
Yeah. What else? What other films were there on the list? I think I've lost the list now. Aliens, Dumbo, Gone with the Wind, Lawrence of Arabia, Tropic Thunder, The Jazz Singer, The Littlest Rebel, Lone Ranger, Balls of Fury, The Last Samurai, blah, blah, blah.
Was Zulu not on there?
No.
What was Dumbo?
Dumbo. Now, is that the Crow? Is that the Jim Crow? There is one of these that's pretty sketch. I think it's Dumbo where it's the crows who talk.
Right.
3 crows. That's
not
the vultures in.
Not the vultures.
Jungle
No,
Book.
They're the fake beetles, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, in Dumbo it's the crow, and he's called Jim Crow.
Ooh.
So
and what does he talk about? Like, separating stuff or something?
I think. Yeah, I don't know.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll give him Dumbo then. That's fine.
We spoke about a spooky remake of The Witches last week.
Oh, it's got one anyway.
There's 2 further spooky remakes afoot.
Yeah, Ghostbusters.
No,
that's a. Yep.
The Craft.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Is Nev Campbell still in it?
No. It looks like a bit of a tween sort of. I watched the trailer. It looks gash. It looks a bit tweeny and a bit naff. I don't think you can replace that. Is it Fairuza Balk? Is she called? Do you remember her from the first film? She just looks like a psychopath.
I've never watched The Craft. I don't think.
Right.
It's one of the very rare films that Phil has watched and I haven't.
Mm. And the third spooky remake, which my missus told me about, is Hocus Pocus. It's been remade.
Yeah, I think I've read the same article as you.
With the original cast. Bette Midler.
Oh, yeah. Fairuza Balk. Yeah, she was in lots of things as like the freaky one, wasn't she?
Yeah, bit typecast.
Yes. Christine Taylor. Yeah, some faces I recognise here. Robin Tunney. I recognise her. She was like a 90s. I don't know what she was in. What happens in it?
I think Fairuza Balk dies.
Oh.
I think she gets. I think she gets like the bad sauce.
Does she get the craft?
I think she gets the bad craft and goes a bit dark, and the other 3 have to beat her in a wand fight or something.
It's a film about cheese slices.
Yeah, and Hocus Pocus is number 3.
Right.
The original cast.
Okay.
Bette Midler.
Is it a remake or a sequel?
I think it's a remake.
All right.
Yeah, I'm not.
It's got the same people in there, maybe.
Yeah, Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, and Kathy Najimy.
Is that who it is? Is it not that? Is it not the witch's witch? I thought it was her in it.
Angelica Houston. No, it's the large. Do you remember the comic relief in Sister Act? The nun.
I don't know. Whoopi Goldberg wasn't the comic relief in that.
She was the
Was she the dramatic?
When was the last time you watched Sister Act?
Probably like 1998.
I'm gonna go out on a limb here, and I'm gonna say Sister Act is a top 20 greatest film ever made. It's a 5-map film.
Wow, where do you put Nuns on the Run?
Oh, Nuns on the Run. I used to love that one.
That must be higher than Sister Act.
No
Do you,
way.
did you ever notice that Hollywood gets, like, in a theme?
A nun theme?
Well, with anything. So, like, you'll get a slew of, like, ghost, like, remakes of witch films.
It's the whole, well, that was successful. Let's copy it and make us some money.
Yeah, or, like,
until it dwindles.
Really late sequels. So there's a Scream 5 with the original cast.
Yeah, Courtney Cox is back, isn't she?
Yeah.
Why?
Dinero. The dollar.
Do you know who's in the supporting cast of Sister Act?
I can't remember.
Harvey Keitel.
Right.
Dame, what's she called? The old lady.
Judi Dench.
Not Vera Lynn.
Judi Dench.
No, the other one.
Edna Everage.
Helen Mirren.
No.
They're all the dames. That's
Shakespearean.
Margaret Thatcher.
She was in the Harry Potter films. With a Scottish accent.
McGonagall? Professor McGonagall?
Yeah, that's the one.
I can't remember her name.
She was in it, in Sister Act.
Right.
Sister Mary Clarence. Can't remember her name.
Typecast much.
Yeah. Okay, should we move on? Because
yeah. This is a record-breaking podcast. This is like the early teens.
Joe Biden's got some advice for the cops on how to de-escalate situations.
Oh God!
I don't know where I've put it though.
Is it a big shot in the ass?
But beyond that, you have to teach people how to de-escalate circumstances. De-escalate. So instead of anybody coming at you, the first thing you do is shoot to kill. You shoot them in the leg.
Just shoot him in the leg.
Just blow a leg off.
Sweep the leg.
So this is Joe Biden, who's part of a campaign that's sowing divide and, I suppose, malfeasance in America. Why is he de-escalating it with Trump?
I don't follow.
Well, like the campaigns, going against each other and shouting at each other in the debates and stuff.
The last debate, there was no sort of shouting or anything. It was quite civil.
I think it's because they were told off, wasn't it?
Yeah, the mute button.
Yeah.
Well, I think Trump realised that after that first performance, it was counterproductive. So he toned it down. Speaking of the man himself, the Beatles famously got caught and caused controversy by stating they were bigger than Jesus. Yeah. Well, Donald's not going to make that mistake.
Somebody said to me the other day, "You're the most famous person in the world by far." I said, "No, I'm not. No, I'm not." They said, "Yes, you are." I said, "No." They said, "Who's more famous?" I said, "Jesus Christ." I'm not taking any chances. I'm not going to have an argument. Hey, I'm not having any arguments. Jesus Christ. I'm not going to take any chances. I'll give it, I guarantee. And let me look up and I'll say, and it's not even close.
He's practicing his stand-up. I mean, he's obviously joking. You can see him laughing at himself. It's almost self-deprecating. Almost. Almost. It's interesting. He's an interesting character. I'm not saying I like him or anything, but...
he's interesting.
It's just
he knows how to play a crowd.
Yeah, and it's win at all costs, isn't it? It's that definite.
Yeah.
And now he'll do anything to get to the top, won't he?
Do you know, I think the only reason he ran is because Obama said... But did you see that press ball where Obama had a go at him?
No.
Saying one thing's for... Oh, I can't do Barack Obama, but one thing's for certain. You're never going to have my job. You'll never be able to call yourself the president. Right, it's almost like that put a bee in his bonnet, and they said, "Well, fuck you." Right, I will do.
Yeah,
it's almost spiteful.
I can believe that.
Yeah, I can as well. It comes across as having that kind of personality, but again, it's dangerous to speculate, isn't it? You don't see someone.
Where's he going to go next?
Space.
Space president.
Yeah.
Well, there's rumours if he loses, he's going to run in 24.
Oh, God.
He'll still be younger than Biden, probably.
Well, yeah, he'll always be younger than Biden.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
It's just how things work.
Time works.
How causality is healed. Oh, my God. Oh, my God. You know, our favourite daytime TV presenter, Philip Schofield.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He's been on the radio and stuff this week talking about the event where it came out.
Oh, not the £1 million cube.
Is it because we've all forgotten?
I think
there's some more bad press coming.
Has he changed his mind?
No, he's got a book out.
Oh, here we go.
Christmas number one.
Yeah.
It's that time of year.
Yeah,
I can't think of anything worse.
So cynical. And he was talking to Chris Evans on Radio 2, and I listened to it, bits of it, and it was striking how he talked about it being. He kept referring to it as the event, and he was talking about the PR, how the PR had to be involved, and the lawyers, and they had to read what he'd written down and okay it, and all this lot. So I cut all that stuff out. I just
why? I wonder if he's
because it's so stage managed. What you watch on TV isn't real.
Well, I'm just wondering if the reason he had to get lawyers involved is because I wonder if because he said his hand hadn't been forced, but I wonder if it has, and there was something coming out.
Who knows? We'd have to get through the web of the PR machine to get through that, wouldn't we?
Mm.
So I clipped the last minute or so of his interview because I think you might enjoy the end.
Okay.
Holly and I had gone out for a long sort of, it wasn't a drink or lunch really, we were just discussing, it was a meeting where we had drinks, but we stayed very sober which is unlike us, because it was a serious subject. You know, what do I do? What am I going to do? How are we going to do this? And I said, I've thought about it a lot, and I think what I should do is that we'll do it on a Thursday morning, because we don't do Fridays. I said, we'll do it on a Thursday morning, and then you know, I want you to interview me, and then I'll go and you carry on, and we'll get, you know, sort of someone in to do the rest of the show. And she burst out laughing and said, are you joking? So I said, well, what I can't think of another. She did. That's ridiculous. You honestly believe that you are going to do something like that and then get up and go without me? She said, we do this and we do it together and we leave together, so it has to be a Friday. And then we found the Friday that actually worked. Because Holly has been astonishing. Like, that'll make me cry. Literally the best mate. Literally the best mate.
It's a bit cringe, isn't it now?
Literally the best mate.
The thing is if he has been closeted all these years for whatever reason, I imagine it's quite a big thing, isn't it? 'Cause he's got 2 daughters and he's been married or whatever. And the thing is, you don't know what's kind of happened in his relationship. He might have been having an open relationship with agreement of his wife. It could be lots of things in between or whatever. So I suppose it is quite daunting, isn't it? If you're not being cynical, for him to come out, but then to kind of promote his book off the back of it and do these emotional interviews and do the whole stage managed coming out, it's a bit...
Literally.
That's the problem with it.
The best mate.
Yeah.
People are coming out all the time. It's not a... I understand what you said, and it could be a big thing for him, and that's great, but it's the whole... You're right, it almost feels fake. But when he did that.
That's why I preempted it with when he was talking about how it was stage managed and the PR and the lawyers were involved. This was the event.
Yeah, it could have been as simple as, it's in the papers or whatever, and Phil just says, I'm gay. I'm gay now. And I don't think anyone would have batted an eyelid. And that wouldn't have sold many books.
And the other thing as well is it's quite a coinky-dink that it was all starting to come out in the papers that he was a bitch on set. A la Ellen DeGeneres, or whatever her surname is.
Well, there was a thing boiling up between him and Ruth Langsford, wasn't there?
Yeah, that's still there, obviously.
Yeah. It's a bit. No, I'm not going to say that. Well, it's a bit sort of Kevin Spacey.
Oh no!
Oh, by the way, I'm gay.
The deflection.
Yeah.
Never mind all that.
Everyone that just go, we know Kevin.
I don't know.
It's
literally the best mate.
Well, at least we got more clips.
Exactly. Yeah, got the ISO. Well, shall we adjourn?
Yes, that was the longest podcast we've done this week.
Yeah, it's nearly midnight.
What's that?
In real
old
time.
money.
I got hairy
Cunt! I'm literally a...
Right, we'll be back next week with Dave Matheson. We're going to learn about some star myths.
Big Dave.
Yeah, get your start doing your research now. Oh, did you see they did a little him and Cometan had a little video conversation.
Yes.
Did you see it?
Yeah, it was good though.
Yeah, I had a bit of a Cilla Black moment. I might have to buy a hat.
A hat?
Yeah.
A condom.
For a wedding?
For the wedding, yeah. That was a joke. All right then. Well, we'll see you next week.
It really bothers me.
Thanks for tuning in, and don't forget to send your shit in. Send us your shit.
No, don't send us shit.
Come here, goosey pig.
Communist.
It really bothers me.
Sonny Pickering!
Who the fuck's that?
Yeah, me!
Excuse me.
I've been coming to terms with the fact that
I'm a Marxist.
I'm literally a communist.
They give him a big fat shot in the ass, and this is such a crock of shit.